gives a fuck about an Oxford comma? By Great 78.
Who gives a fuck about an Oxford comma? I've seen those English dramas too. They're cruel. So if there's any other way to spell the word, it's fine with me. With me.
Chapter 29. Spiderwebs. Sunday, November 7th, 1999. Peckwater, Flat 307, Christchurch College, Oxford, England. Hermione. She woke with a pain in her neck, courtesy of having fallen asleep sitting upright whilst reading. It was early morning, she could tell, from the weak grey light outside. The only other things awake at this hour were the birds in the trees, and the students returning quietly to their own flats, hoping not to run into anyone they knew whilst wearing last night's clothes. Hermione stood and stretched, pushing back the curtain to check out the family of robins that had made their nest in the only scraggly tree in the car park outside her window. The little family could be counted upon to start singing even before dawn, and whilst she'd learned to silence the window in order to rest, she still enjoyed the sight of them. She smiled, wondering briefly if Draco still had his illustrated book of birds that she'd given him a year ago. Thinking back to the previous night, she felt the wave of disappointment that threatened to crash over her when she recalled Draco departing the great hall with Amelia. She supposed she should have known that they would go out again. After all, near the end of her tirade over the flat's filthiness on Friday evening, Draco had told her his intentions with the woman. The fact that it was this woman that he'd chosen to date was especially irksome, seeing as Amelia was everything that Hermione wasn't. But above all, Draco was her friend, she reminded herself, and she wanted her friends to be happy. If Amelia made Draco happy, then so be it. Yawning, she opened her bedroom door, taking in the now familiar sight of Draco asleep on the floor just outside her room, in spite of the now clean sofa. Unlike previous nights, he had foregone the blanket and pillow. Instead, his left cheek rested directly upon the hard, wooden floor. She could not help her worried frown at the sight of him, still fully dressed in what he'd worn to dinner last night. She saw now that he still wore his boots. Godric, whatever he'd drunk last night must have been strong, she thought. "Draco?" she said, bending to touch his shoulder. "Wake up. Let me help you to the sofa. You'll be more comfortable there." Groaning, the wizard rolled to his back, and now she could see the massive bruise that bloomed across his left cheek, encircling his eye. "Oh my God, Draco! What happened?" Hermione yelled. "Theo, come out here!" Theo's door burst open, and for one of the first times since Hermione had lived with him, the wizard seemed to be alone and wearing pajama trousers. "What's happening? Is it time?" "Time? What? Theo, did you go out with Draco last night? He's injured." There was an indistinguishable mumble from the wizard, still sprawled on the ground. Hermione dropped to her knees, lifting gently at Draco's shoulders to help him sit up. His long fingers came up to his cheek as he winced. "Don't touch it," she pleaded. "Let me see if I can heal it." Theo helped him to stand, and the pair of them assisted Draco to the sofa. "What happened, mate?" his friend asked. "Dunno," Draco mumbled, his eyes still closed. "Had a drink." "Right. You and Amelia were going to the coven. Did you make it there?" asked Hermione. Draco blinked a few times, his swollen blackish-purple eyelid moving slower than the other one. "Yes, had a drink. A gin and tonic, I think. She was—" But then he snapped his lips closed, swallowing before he spoke again. "Jason showed up. In the WC. He was asking me something, then someone hit me." Theo's jaw clenched. Was it Jason?
No, I'm sure it wasn't.
Hermione started, but broke off at Draco's look of confirmation. She whispered in disbelief.
Jason hit you?
Draco nodded slowly, his head clearly in pain. I went for my wand. He saw me reaching for it, went for it too.
Did you hex him?
Theo asked, a bit too eagerly.
No,
Draco bit out. Apparated here.
Hermione was shaking her head in disbelief. No, you couldn't have. The statute.
He was likely drunk, Hermione. Probably won't remember a thing, Theo offered as convincingly as he could. She licked her lips, looking back and forth between the two men with doubt in her eyes.
Do you really think so?
Draco hesitated before nodding his agreement and lying back on the sofa. Yes, pretty sure he'd had a few before he found me. Exactly. Right. I'm going to make some coffee, Theo said, bustling away and leaving them alone. After a moment, she nodded.
Right. Well, it's already bruised, so I can't do very much about that. But perhaps some dittany for the pain.
She summoned the bottle non-verbally, spreading the goop liberally on his bruise.
Now, you take it easy and slow today, Malfoy, all right?
His eyes had been closed as he gingerly touched the edges of the bruise on his face, but now they opened, the silver colour piercing in contrast to the dark purple. It's Draco, Granger. She laughed quietly, pulling his hand away before it touched the dittany. She squeezed it tightly. Drawing his hand to her lips, she kissed the knuckles.
I'm glad you didn't fight him. Or worse.
Draco gave a half-hearted smile. Not sure I could have, even if I'd wanted to. Apparently the drinks at the coven are extremely strong. I felt like I could barely stand up, if I'm being honest. She frowned again at these words. Draco did not drink every night, but surely his magic, combined with his alcohol tolerance, was enough to handle a few gin and tonics, without getting plastered out of his mind. He sensed her concern, and gave her another smile. Don't fret about it. The bartender probably just poured a double when it was supposed to be a single. Aren't you on your way somewhere? Your partnership project, wasn't it?
Yes, but if you need me to stay...
Nonsense, Granger. Hermione, I mean. Theo and I should work on the same, Draco said, sitting up straighter on the sofa. Don't let me keep you. But do me a favour, and steer clear of that bloke today, yes?
Hermione nodded her agreement. Right. I'm just going to hop in the shower. If the telephone rings, please answer it. It might be Amelia.
Draco. The wizard gave her a reassuring smile, and waited until the door to the washroom closed before attempting to stand. It was difficult to ignore his body's aching stiffness. Sleeping on the floor for the past week had beaten him up almost as badly as Jason Coleridge had. You think he knows what happened yesterday? Theo asked quietly, stirring his coffee before taking a sip. Possibly. I've no idea how effective Weasley's memory charms are, but based on his OWL scores, we probably shouldn't expect too much. Can't worry about it now, though. We've got to focus on Shacklebolt. True. Theo nodded. I'm going to freshen up and get dressed. I've got a long morning of following our girl around, after all. Draco nodded nervously, wincing as his face moved under the bruise. You've got to make sure she stays away, mate. As soon as Potter and Weasley arrive and get set up, you'll go. Theo nodded and drained his coffee, then hurried to his room to wait. 5 minutes later, the telephone rang. Draco stood to answer it, picking up the smaller piece of the thing to hold to his ear. Hello. The voice was muffled, indicating that he'd done something wrong. Hello? He tried again, holding the phone a bit away from his ear. It was still difficult to hear the person on the other end of the line. He flipped the piece around, putting his ear at the other end. Hello?
Draco!
Amelia's clear voice was at once familiar to him and not at all in a good way. Draco did not know exactly why he found this woman repellent, but something about her bothered him. "Amelia, hello." The lilting voice whinged in his ear. "Draco, you stood me up again! I'm going to stop letting you go off to the toilets on our dates if you keep this up." Amelia tittered in a way that made it quite clear that she meant it. The washroom door opened, and Granger emerged dressed in a bathrobe and swathed in a cloud of gardenia scent. Her ordinarily full curls were heavy with water, and the steam made her skin glow. Catching sight of her, he lost all train of thought or speech for a moment. She was beautiful. The heat of the shower made her skin dewy and bright. Her eyes shimmered beneath still damp lashes. She blinked and then smiled at him, and it broke something within him. He felt a goofy grin spread across his face, even as his bruise ached because of it. "Is that Amelia?" she mouthed to him. He nodded. She approached as he pulled the telephone away from his ear, holding it out to her so that she could hear the woman's voice, but close enough that she needed to stand directly next to him. He could feel the heat from the shower radiating off of her, and he barely noticed the telephone cradled in his hands between them. She looked up at him with her gorgeous copper eyes as he drew in an unsteady breath, breathing in her fragrance as though it were the last breath he'd ever need. Her hands came up to cover his as they held the telephone piece together. Amelia was mid-sentence. "Just have to find a way to make it up to me, is all. I love jewellery, of course. Do you like jewellery?" Draco's eyebrows drew together, mystified by the words, as he stared into Granger's eyes. Granger's thumb ran along the onyx stone of the Malfoy signet ring on his right hand. His tongue darted out to wet his lips as his gaze dropped to the Cupid's bow of hers. What?" The woman continued speaking as though he'd not said a word. "In fact, one of my favourite pieces I have is a lovely tongue ring. Come to think of it, it was my last boyfriend's favourite jewellery too. Next time we're alone, maybe I can show you why." Draco let the telephone slip between his fingers as his hands moved of their own accord to Hermione's waist. The witch caught the thing, lifting the piece up to her ear before speaking. "Amelia, this is Hermione. I'll meet you at the library as soon as I can." She dropped the telephone bit back down to the desk before running her hands up the outsides of his arms to circle his shoulders. "Draco, is this a good idea?" she whispered. "Which? Have you ever had a bad idea?" She smiled faintly as her eyes met his once more. "I've dated a friend before, and it didn't end well. Will this change things?" Draco could think of only a handful of things that he'd like to change about this moment. Fewer clothes, for one, a bruiseless face, the threat of a power-hungry pureblood intent upon shaping the future of the wizard kind in the worst of ways, not looming over them both. But the rest of it, this connection between them, the way he felt about her, and the way he hoped she felt about him. No, he wanted it just like this. "I won't let that happen," he breathed. She leaned towards him, coming up on tiptoe to meet his lips with hers. She brushed his with her own. Her fragrance enveloped him, and his fingers pulled her to him, wanting to have her as close as possible. He tilted his head, and she did the same, but just as they were about to deepen their kiss, a voice interrupted. Draco, Hermione needs to go to the library, remember? And we've got our own partnership project to work on," Theo said pointedly from the doorway of his bedroom. Draco sighed and released the witch, who reluctantly stepped back. "I thought you said you were nearly done with your project," she said in a playfully accusatory tone.
Nearly done. I meant, nearly started," he smirked. She smacked him lightly against his chest, letting her fingers linger for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "I'll leave you to your work, then." Hermione. 15 minutes later, fortified by a cup of tea and a sausage roll from the large package that Theo had thoughtfully purchased the previous night, Hermione set off for the library. Her head was swimming in thoughts of what had just happened. They had kissed again. No one had been drunk or confused about each other's intentions. Draco had assured her that whatever happened between them wouldn't destroy their friendship, and for the first time Hermione was inclined to believe it. Yes, there was the little matter of Amelia and Jason, but she and Jason had never said they were exclusive. Perhaps Draco and Amelia had the same arrangement. Despite the earlier attempt at sunshine, the morning's weather had settled on a cool, slightly rainy day of grey cloudiness. It was the kind of weather that begged the world's inhabitants to stay indoors with a cosy drink and a book, curled in someone else's arms, Hermione thought wistfully. If only her project partner had actually done any work on their partnership project assignment, she'd have been doing just that with her day. Instead, as she crossed Pequota Quad, pulling her berry-coloured scarf tighter around her, she was met by a familiar face. Jason, hi! How are things?" she asked lamely. She had not been ready to see him. She would need to break things off with him, of course, not only because of the fight he'd had with Draco, but because of what had just happened in the flat. She just had not expected to address that so soon.
"Oh, I was coming to your flat. I thought you'd be there. But never mind. We need to talk."
The man began without greeting.
"Are you going to breakfast?"
No, I already ate," she said uneasily. Jason had never been so to the point with her, and it seemed outside his nature. "I'm headed to the library to meet Amelia."
"I'll walk with you,"
Jason said shortly, matching her stride.
"Did you speak to your flatmate this morning?"
Her lips pursed angrily. "If you mean Draco, then yes. So it's true. You hit him."
"He was about to hurt me first," the man said defensively. "Besides, he got away."
Hermione was silent at this. Jason did not want to reveal that he knew about magic to her, yet there could be no doubt that he did. If what Draco said was true, he had watched the wizard disappear before his eyes. Why was he playing dumb? It made her hackles raise in a way that she could not resolve. She stopped walking and pivoted to face him. "Jason, we should have a talk about this. I know there's more to this than you're telling me, but I need to meet Amelia right now. Can we plan to meet up after lunch?" Jason's eyes went wide for a moment, as though weighing his options. Then he reached for her arm, his fingers gripping harder than necessary.
"I think we should talk now, Hermione. You told me a couple of weeks ago that you wanted to meet my mother. It turns out she's eager to meet you as well. Let's go to my house, yeah? Mother will make us breakfast and we can talk, just the three of us."
Her shock lasted only a moment before she regained her wits. Wrenching her arm in his iron grip, she tried to pull away from him. It was futile. His fingers only tightened on her elbow, then gripped her right hand. "No, Jason, I really need to—"
"You really need to come with me, Hermione. Mother and I can keep you safe. Your flatmate, he's dangerous. He's trying to come between us,"
Jason wheedled, and now Hermione could see the desperation in his eyes. "I said no." She pulled hard once more. He twisted her arm back behind her, preventing her from reaching for her wand.
"Please,"
he said, his voice crumbling into desperation now.
"Mother needs you. She's unhappy, you understand. But
if she's given this gift—"
Harry Potter had been a capable wizard, what with defeating Lord Voldemort and everything he had accomplished. But with her knowledge of magic and her lightning-quick reflexes, Hermione Granger was a formidable opponent in her own right. Harry may have been the one to disarm and defeat evil incarnate, but the boy who lived owed his life many times over to this witch. Jason, with his boorish muscles and his mother and his man-handling ways, never stood a chance. "Expulso!" she cried forcefully, turning swiftly and pushing the air towards him with her left hand. Even wandlessly, the force of the spell hit the Muggle man hard enough to shove him to the ground. He grabbed for the hem of her trousers as her hand reached for her wand. "No, don't go! Confringo!" she seethed, holding her shoulder where the man had twisted it past the point of comfort. In an instant, the man's hands burned, and he pulled back in pain. "Stop! Please, you're hurting me!" he cried pitifully from his place on the ground. She stepped away from him. "Don't touch me! Stay away from me, you understand?" He looked up at her with hurt eyes. "I thought you were different. Mother said you weren't. She said you were just like the others, looking down on us, wanting to control us. I told her you were special, but you're not. You're just as bad as the rest. But you'll get what you deserve in the end." Hermione took a deep, shaky breath. "Jason, you need to leave me alone. Do you understand? Next time I may not be so willing to let this go." She turned and hurried away, listening over her shoulder for footsteps that never came. She practically flew up the steps to the library building, pulling open the door with her left hand as her right shoulder was aching from Jason's twist. Only a few feet inside the door, the tears that had threatened to fall finally overtook her, spilling quickly down her cheeks. She whisked them away with the back of her hand. "Hermione?" a concerned voice asked from her left. Clearing her throat, she straightened, blinking away the last of the tears from her face. "Amelia, glad you're here," she said, and she meant it. If Jason had followed her in here, it was unlikely he'd have done anything in front of a classmate. Or, at least, she hoped so, recalling the desperation in his voice. "Well, you made it clear that I'd better be," Amelia answered playfully. "So, shall we get started?" Hermione swallowed, fixing a confident smile on her face. "Sure. Let's find a quiet corner and see what we can accomplish." Draco. He checked her room carefully to confirm that she'd taken the false scarf. She had. He put the one from his pocket that contained the real pin upon her bed. Flourishing his wand, Draco's Patronus emerged from the tip before it raced towards the window of the sitting room with his message for Potter. "Hermione has left for the library. Come as soon as you can." From the bedroom door, Theo cocked his head at his oldest friend. "Have I ever told you how appropriate I find a peacock to be for your Patronus, mate?" The blond man sent him a droll look. "What exactly is so upstanding about a fox, then?" Theo smiled. "You're right. Gorgeous tails on the both of us, though." Ron. Evelyn burnt the porridge this morning, and the smell lingered in the air like an unwanted, unwashed guest. It was disgusting and disheartening to Ron, who had always taken a well-cooked meal for granted. Porridge was his least favourite breakfast, and even this she couldn't get right. Her tears were never ending, it seemed. "I'm sorry, Ronnie, I really am trying." "I know you are, love. Listen, how would it be if you were to spend the day with my mum? The two of you could chat, get to know each other. Maybe she can show you a few cooking spells." His girlfriend sniffled one more time before nodding. "Sure, I can do that." "Good." Ron kissed her warmly,
pulling her into a close embrace. "And listen, even if you burn the porridge every day for the rest of our lives, I'll still love you, all right?" He smoothed her blonde, soft hair, and she smiled up at him. "I love you too." Behind him, the flue burst into life. "Ron, are you ready?" Harry's head asked from just above the grate. "I just heard from him. His Patronus is a soaring peacock. Did you know that?" Ron laughed, still looking into Evelyn's eyes lovingly. "I'll be home later, Ev, yeah? And call, Mum. She'd love to teach someone to cook. Merlin knows her own children are hopeless at it." Hermione. Wading through the material for the constitutional law assignment with Amelia was unnecessarily difficult. As this partnership project counted for a third of the grade, Amelia's plan had been to coast by on Hermione's efforts. Apparently, she then hoped to revise for the final examination and essay by cramming the final weeks of class. "Right, so let's go over this bit about parliamentary sovereignty," Hermione continued, pulling hers and Jason's notes towards her. Do we have to? You just spent 20 minutes talking about separation of powers. Isn't that the gist of things? Let's take a break. I want to hear all of the hot tea you've got." Hot tea?" Hermione wrinkled her nose at the other woman. Amelia's tinkling laugh carried over the other study carousels nearby, eliciting a handful of shushes. "Of course, silly. All of the good gossip. You're living with two of the fittest men on campus, and you're practically besties with the third. I assume you're practically dripping with it." Hermione tilted her head in confusion. "Amelia, sorry, what are you talking about?" The woman flicked her auburn hair impatiently over one shoulder. "Come off it, Hermione. You had to have heard the latest. About Draco and Jason." Her eyes widened. Of course, Amelia had been at the coven when Jason hit Draco. "Well, I know they fought, of course." "Oh my goodness! They fought? How romantic!" Amelia practically squealed. "Tell me everything." Hermione's eyes widened further at this. Two men fighting in a public seemed the furthest from romance that she could possibly imagine. This was not Romeo and Tybalt in the streets of Verona, for Godric's sake. "Tell me first what you heard and saw, all right?" she asked the other woman. Amelia seemed all too happy to take the reins of the conversation. "Well, you know, Draco and I went for drinks. I kept thinking, I'm going to turn him, you know? Well, of course you know. You're his flatmate. I assume you've tried as well, with no success. But with a body and a face like that, who can blame us, am I right?" Hermione's face was shaded by confusion that she tried to disguise as conspiratorial kinship. "What do you mean? Turn Draco?" "Well, two women, of course. I mean, it's obvious he's practically drooling over Jason Coleridge. Who isn't, really? I truly doubt that last night was their first time together." "Right," Hermione murmured, perplexed. "Of course, I've heard that every girl who's tried to fuck Jason gets rejected outright. I mean, you're his best friend, I'm sure you know. But I'd hoped that Draco was different. If your other flatmate, Theo, can bed both men and women, what's to stop Draco too?" Hermione frowned. "Jason is gay?" Amelia laughed. "Did you think he wasn't? Of course he is. Wait, did you manage to fuck Jason?" The woman's tone was equal parts jealousy and disbelief. No," Hermione faltered. "Wait, does that mean you've never... you and Draco haven't done the deed?" "No, sadly. Not for lack of trying on my part, though. I tried coming on to him, but that wasn't working, of course. That's how I figured out he went the other way. So I got my friend Alison to help me with a little liquid persuasion. But that seems to have hardly made a difference. Draco kept running off to the loo and disappearing on me. Hermione met Amelia's eyes now. What exactly do you mean by liquid persuasion? Theo. With the wards adjusted to allow Ron entry, the two Gryffindors apparated directly into the sitting-room. The red-haired one immediately descended upon the plate piled high with sausage rolls on the kitchenette table. "Godric, I'm starved! Any eggs?" he asked the dark-haired Slytherin wizard.
"No, Weasley. We've got a lot to do today, if you don't recall," Draco said. "Potter, you've got your cloak, and you're sure it'll deflect a Revelio charm?" "It will," Harry said firmly. "Hermione left with a duplicate scarf."
"Yes, she should be gone most of the day," Theo answered. "As soon as everything's in place, I'll be apparating away with the real scarf."
"Right, I'll get these extendable ears in place and disillusion them," Ron said, wiping his greasy fingers on his robes. He and Harry entered Hermione's room, and Harry readied the scroll and Hermione's quick quotes quill. Theo hurried to his bedroom, finding his rucksack that he'd packed the night before. He shrunk it down to place into his pocket. "Don't forget the scarf," Draco said from his bedroom threshold.
"How could I? I'll go get it."
Crossing to Hermione's bedroom, he found the scarf containing Hermione's considerable enchantments folded on the bed, where Draco had left it. As Theo picked it up, a note floated free from the folds. The outside was addressed to Hermione. Curiosity nearly overtook him, but Harry cleared his throat behind him. "We're ready when you are." Theo nodded, placing the note on Hermione's pillow.
"Right. Draco, are you ready?"
he called back to the sitting-room. "Yes, as ready as I'll ever be. Theo, find her and stay with her. Keep her safe and out of the way," Draco instructed.
"Not to worry, mate. I've got this,"
Theo assured him, stepping out into the sitting-room with his flatmate. He gave a nod of confirmation to the other two wizards, standing just inside Hermione's bedroom door, Harry's cloak draped over both their heads. They nodded back, and with the eerie bit of magic, disappeared entirely behind the shimmery fabric. The door to Hermione's room closed seemingly on its own, and Theo could feel just the very edges of their double muffliato spells blanketing the room to prevent any noise from escaping. To Draco, Theo said,
"Good luck, mate. Stay strong. You can do this."
He clapped his friend on the back. Draco nodded silently as a bludger of nerves likely ricocheted within his body. Theo twisted on the spot, landing in the men's WC at the Tesco Express, funny enough, where he'd met the red-haired teaching assistant for the first time. He hurried past the shop clerk with a cheery, "Thanks, mate," called over his shoulder. "Come again," the man said, not looking up from the horoscope section of his newspaper. Theo ran to the library, ducking inside and wiping off the mist that had accumulated on his head and shoulders. Walking quickly towards the washrooms, he stuffed Hermione's original scarf in the corridor rubbish bin, then pushed quickly into the men's loo. Reviewing the fleeting flu spell in his head, he transfigured the hand-dryer into a fireplace, tossing in the green powder and calling out his destination. "Peckwater, flat 307, washroom." A stall door behind him banged open, and a man nearly fell out of the small space, his feet struggling to maintain contact with the floor. Gripping the doorframe like a sailor in a squall, he was a half-step behind the strong odour of cheap whiskey that preceded him. The inebriated man's bleary eyes jittered and rolled as he took in the sight of the fireplace and Theo. In an unsteady voice he asked, "You're a wizard, right?" Theo turned to him, recognizing the drunk they'd first met at the Oxford bus station over a month ago. "No, my good man, you're just hallucinating." "Oh, good." With that, the man half stumbled, half ran to the toilet door, throwing it open to bumble his way into the corridor. To a passer-by he announced, "I'm hallucinating!" The door swung shut, and Theo was thankfully alone. He turned to admire his fleeting flu for only a moment.
The flue passage inside the frame of the makeshift fireplace flamed and swirled, and, holding his breath, Theo spoke his destination once more and stepped through. Success! He was inside the shower of their flat. Quiet voices could be heard in the sitting room, and Theo counted on the volume of their words for the two men outside the toilet door to not notice the sensation of Theo's own muffling charm to this room. He readied himself quickly, expanding the bag from his pocket that he'd brought with him, and pulling out item after item. He'd been collecting bits and bobs for days now. Thankfully, the parade of revellers who came through his bed were often the forgetful type. There at the bottom of the bag was the most important thing, of course. He might not ever need it, but he would be ready just in case. Hermione. Hermione almost could not believe her ears. She stared at the auburn-haired woman in disbelief. "What exactly do you mean by liquid persuasion?" Amelia's eyes fairly sparkled. "You know! I just gave him a little rope. Just an itty-bitty roofie is all." She was silent with shock for a long moment, then asked, "You gave Draco drugs? When?" "My God, get your knickers out of a twist, Hermione! Like you've never been roofied, or done it to someone else, for God's sake! It's not a big deal. Almost everyone does it." "Everyone does it," Hermione repeated faintly. Amelia appeared to accept this as an agreement. "But you didn't say when you did it. Did you give this to him last night?" "Yes. After the way he skipped out on Halloween, I thought it might be my only chance. But then I heard that Jason followed him into the toilet. People said they locked the door. They were in there for a long time. So, Jason got all the benefits of my roofie, I suppose. I never saw Draco come back out, so I guess he snuck out the back way." Amelia finished, with a sad look on her face. "Yes, Jason certainly got the benefit of it," Hermione said, in an acidic voice, unnoticed by Amelia. "Was that the only time, then?" "No, I gave him one at Halloween, too, and he snuck away from that as well. And that was some of my best stuff. Extra potent. What a waste." Hermione was silent, shell-shocked, for several seconds. "Shall we get back to it, then?" Amelia asked brightly. She picked up a pen and legal pad. "What do you know about the rule of law?" The witch smiled a false grin, gathering her books and notes and shoving them roughly into her rucksack. Swinging the bag over her shoulder, she said, "How about you figure out the rule of law yourself, Amelia? You're the expert on breaking the law, it seems." Amelia's mouth was a perfect O of surprise. "Hermione! You can't—" "Oh, I can, and I will. I'll be speaking to Dr. Smith in the morning about dissolving this partnership, and I'll be telling him the reasons why. Good luck to you, Amelia." She flounced out of the study area, hurrying to the door of the library. Outside, the skies had opened up, dumping torrents of rain. Hermione turned back inside, rushing to the corridor on the right side of the anteroom. She could just apparate back to the flat. Yes, it was breaking the university's rules, but apparently, based on Jason's and Amelia's behaviours, that was de rigueur here at Oxford. Up ahead of her, a man who looked a bit like Theo was pushing open the door for the men's. Perhaps he and Draco were here, working on their own project. Should she look for them? She quickly decided against it. She was tired, stressed, and upset. She could use a bit of a rest before she talked to Draco about this. Perhaps, after a short kip, she could start this day over again in a better frame of mind. As she hurried down the hallway to the ladies' room, an intoxicated man stumbled into her path. "I'm hallucinating!" the drunk man announced, and Hermione cut him a wide berth to allow him and his cloud of alcohol stench to pass. The thought of Jason and a drugged Draco fighting in a washroom the previous night flitted across her mind. Was she going spare? What was going on in the toilets at Oxford these days? The ladies' was empty. Choosing the furthest stall from the door, Hermione cast a quick muffling charm before twisting in place and landing in the center of her bedroom with a small crack. Hovering over the desk, watching her quick quotes quill, stood two very familiar wizards. Well, their heads and shoulders, at least. Apparently, they had wrapped themselves in Harry's invisibility cloak, but were now intently focused on the desk in front of them. Each of them spun to look at her in horror as she landed, their eyes growing wide with fear. The dark-haired of the two slowly lifted his finger to place vertically in front of his mouth, the sign to stay quiet. But it was all too much for Hermione at the moment. In as quiet a voice as she could manage, she said, "Harry James Potter, what the absolute fuck are you and Ron doing in my bedroom?"
Gives a fuck about an Oxford comma. I seen those English dramas too. They're cruel.
Thank you for listening to Who Gives a Fuck About an Oxford Comma by Great78. If you enjoyed the story and would like to listen to more, please follow me on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Silver and Copper. Or you can find me under Great78 on Archive of Our Own.